Hello.
Yeah, I think we can share this link.
Yes, Kishore, I can hear you.
Yeah, it's okay now. But sir, some sound is coming, my dear.
Yeah, some lag is there. I think I can hear. Yeah, I can hear the same thing twice.
I don't. Can you
It's
mute it?
deferred
one more
live,
time?
maybe.
Yeah, I think that is mine. I think my YouTube was on.
Okay, okay.
Uh, somebody has to keep only YouTube on. Arun, this is working, right? This YouTube.
Yes, it is working. I went and I saw. Yes, it is working.
It's live on. Yeah, chairman wants to share link. Join karo yaar.
So link you will see there itself. Live
Link.
on YouTube. That second thing.
Yeah, copy streaming link. That one.
Yeah. Ah.
I don't know, Vignesh. After starting this event, and I will leave. Okay. I don't know. I have an appointment with your hospital. Follow up.
No problem.
7:15. Okay. But your card is useful. Okay. They given 30% or 25% discount. Okay.
Yeah.
Rakesh, all set for Q&A?
All set.
Oh, good.
Good evening.
Good evening. Chairman Saab, good evening.
Good evening, Chairman
Sir,
sir.
how are you?
Good, good, good. All fine. my dear.
Welcome Vignesh,
Thank you, sir.
and good to
You're
see
live
you.
on YouTube, sir.
Yeah, fine. Yeah,
And
thank you for all the arrangements, Vignesh.
background. You don't want the background?
No, I'll manage it somehow, but as of now it's blurred. I just checked it. I have to. Yeah. So, should I tell Ved sir to join now? Yeah.
I can see some Veena Jain. Is it same him? Is it him?
See, I think if he has any PPT or something, let him join. No, let us
Yeah,
check.
let him join. Let us test that PPT.
Yeah.
Just accept.
Yeah.
Admit
So
that.
that we can start on time as well. Now 10 minutes, just 8 minutes more.
He will be having.
Nirlep, your voice is breaking.
Correct. Yeah.
Hi, Rakesh. How are you?
I'm good. Excited for our first meeting.
See, the voice.
Sir, Nirlep, sir, your voice is low. Your network is bad.
Within
Nirlap, check your network. Some glitches are there.
Nirlep, your network is bad.
okay,
Nirlep, Ved Jain, sir, is here. Shall I admit him? I think I'll admit him, right, Arun?
Yes, let us admit him. I was on mute.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Very clear.
Yeah.
Welcome, sir. And Vignesh, am I audible properly now?
Yes,
Yes,
yes.
your network is here. It's again gone bad.
Okay, I am on hotspot now. So, I don't know. But Wi-Fi is
It's okay. You can manage it.
okay. Okay. Ved Saab, thank you very much, sir, for honoring our invite, sir, out of your busy schedule. I know how much, sir, you are in demand, looking to your stature, looking to your knowledge about this. I know your personality. It was with few of my colleagues would agree that we had an honor to listen you in Mumbai in December 2019 conference, and the way you contributed in this Vivad Se Vishwas Tak scheme and all these things is exemplary, sir. Now, I would also, sir, while welcoming you, I'll also introduce you with my our committee member. Because vice chairman is not there, he is missing the event. But we have our secretary, CA Vignesh Kalyan Raman, sir.
Good evening, sir. We're looking forward to having you here. It's a pleasure. As Nirlep said, we had the honor of listening to you in Mumbai in 2019 when we were there. So it's a very apt topic, and we are really looking forward to hearing you today, this evening.
And sir,
We would have-
just to
We would
add
have
you,
loved to have you here, but
absolutely. And sir, just to add you about the commitment of our secretary, CA Vignesh, just today he returned from India, and actually he is hotel quarantined as per the law prevailing here. And
Okay.
still not only is attending the session, but he is spearheading the whole show, including the YouTube
Great,
link.
great.
So hats off, Vignesh.
It's for the chapter.
Yeah. Our treasurer, sir, he will be joining us soon. We have our dynamic MC member, CA Kishore. Kishore, please go
Hi,
ahead.
good evening, sir.
Good evening, Kishore.
How are you, boss? Good.
Fine, absolutely fine. Yeah.
Okay. Entire CA fraternity here in Doha would like to know the new recent amendments in FEMA, especially for our residents' new rule and everything.
I
So
know.
I think already we have 150 registration as of now. We are expecting around 180 or 200 mark. Anyway, we are eagerly wants to hear you from. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
And
All the best, sir.
We'll make it, sir, interactive, engaging, as you always do, sir. We
And
also have our ExCom member, CA Arun. He is
Good
handling
evening,
all
sir.
our PR related things.
Good evening, sir, and it's a
Good
pleasure.
evening. Yeah.
Pleasure actually having you here. In fact, as Vignesh said, we would love to have you here in person. Actually, hopefully soon we'll have that as well. And in fact, we all are eagerly waiting for your session because your sessions are like really great, and the insight that we get is altogether a different thing itself. So we are eagerly waiting for your session for the day on NRI taxation and things like that. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thanks, sir.
And also we have sorry, sir, I had to receive a call. We have CA Rakesh, who has just joined our management committee. He got elected. Young and dynamic Rakesh. Yes, please.
Good evening, sir. Hello.
Yes, continue. I can hear you.
We are really fortunate to have you here, and we look forward for your session tonight. Thank you.
Sir, can you also share your presentation? So, CA Vignesh, can you?
Yeah,
please
I have. Should I send it across to you?
Sir, you could share it on the screen if you're okay. We can
I
just.
will share
test
it in between after introductory. I think maybe that then after I will start sharing the screen.
Yeah, that's
So
fine.
let's check
No, we
now.
just wanted to test it if it's going fine. That's it.
You want me to do something?
So if you
Sir,
can share your PPT once, just to check.
if you would want to test this share screen, sir, then you could just try it out.
No,
now.
I will share in between. I think at beginning I will do it, and then thereafter I will come to the screen, share screen.
No problem. That's fine.
And sir, this is also our first event in which we are live on YouTube. So again, thanks to CA Vignesh, and also thanks to you, sir, for asking it. So that idea is that maximum people can take the benefit of your knowledge, sir.
Nirlep, I will just let all the members in. I think.
Please, yeah, please. Let's.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening, sir.
Well,
evening, sir.
thank you for letting me in. I was knocking on the door.
Welcome, Farid, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman, sir. Thank you very much. Good evening to you. Good evening, past President Ved Jain, sir. My name is Farid.
Ved, sir, we have our past chairman and the torchbearer of the profession in Doha, CA MI Farid, who is in Qatar since many years, but surely more than my age. So more than 39 years he is in Qatar. Maybe 42 years or so, sir. So.
Good evening, sir. They love to make me feel old.
And we also have amongst us President of Indian Business and Professional Council, Mr. Azim Abbas. Azim, sir, you are there?
Yes, good evening, Nirlip bhai. Good evening to everybody.
Yeah.
Good evening, sir.
Walaikum salam. How are you, Farid bhai? Long time.
Thank you. How are
Ved, sir, upon your insistence, as you rightly said, we have invited the President and the Management Committee member of Indian Business and Professional Council, who is doing tremendous job under the guidance of Embassy, who is also guiding us. We are associated organization with them under the aegis of Indian Embassy. So we'll listen later on a few words from Azim Abbas Sab also. Meanwhile, let's start it. I think we are 62 here, right? So thank you very much.
Yes, Nirlep, I think let's start.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll start, I think. Good evening and a warm welcome to CA Ved Jain sir, Mr. Azim Abbas, President IBPC, and all dear members. Thanks for joining in for this session on practical aspects on NRI taxation and FEMA, a pertinent topic for all of us. And today we have an excellent speaker on the subject matter. So to have an unhindered session, we would like to set some ground rules to be followed by all. And the ground rules goes like this. All participants are requested to mute their audio. All participants are requested to turn off their videos also if possible. Questions to the keynote speaker are to be typed in chat box only. Questions will be answered at the end of each session. Further questions, if any, shall be taken offline. Doha chapter members are entitled to 2 hours of structured CPRs. Member need to fill in Google form and join the webinar with the name as per what has been registered in ICAI records. Non-chapter members are entitled to 2 hours of unstructured CPE, which they will have to apply on their own. So after setting up the ground rules, I humbly request you all to please do visit and follow our LinkedIn, Instagram, and FB page. And also today we are live on YouTube as well. So please do subscribe to that as well. Now, without taking much of your time, I would like to call upon our ever-smiling, charismatic, unassuming, and ambitious Chapter Chairman CA Nirlab Bhatt. CA Nirlab, over to you.
Thank you, Management Committee members, CA Arun Somnath, for your wonderful introduction. Dear respected members, CA Ved Jain sir. Hello, am I audible?
Yes, Nirlab, you're audible.
Thank you, Vignesh. Thank you.
You are audible.
CA, dear respected members, our eminent speaker and past president of ICI, CA Ved Jain sir, our special dignitaries who is attending the event, Mr. Azim Abbas sir, President of Indian Business and Professional Council in Qatar, past chairman of the chapter, and everyone. And those who are attending the event outside India, outside Qatar also, we welcome all of you, but request that please do not put your membership number into the chat box. It's as C. Arun mentioned, the structured CP hours is available only for the Doha chapter members. Thank you for your understanding. Good evening. I hope you and your family members are doing well and staying safe. It's heartening to note that we have received an excellent response to the registration of the first event of the term. So I can say that we have commenced the term with a bang. With great pleasure and privilege, I would like to welcome you all for the CPE session on NRI taxation and FEMA, which is Foreign Exchange Management Act, as we all know, practical aspects of it. It is to be conducted by none other than the subject matter expert and past president of ICI, CA Ved Jain. While the formal introduction of Jain sir will follow later on by CA Kishore, but I would like to say that we had honored to listen him in the Mumbai International Conference in December 2019. And not only the committee member and the past chairman who attended it, but there were around 2,500 attendees who were spellbound by his address. I still remember that silence and attention by which attendees were listening to CA Ved Jain sir. So that's the impact he created. Albert Einstein once quoted, "Hardest thing in the world to understand is the income tax." I am sure after attending today's session, we all will firmly disagree with this quote. Friends, we all are staying outside India and carries the dual identity, which is citizen of India and resident of Qatar. It's very important for us to get ourselves updated with the intricacy of the income tax law in India and comply with the applicable provision. Of late, there are also significant updates in the NRI taxation regime, which often gives rise to a lot of queries and sometimes confusion also. Further, there is also an interplay, as I sent in the invitation, between FEMA and income tax provision, which we also need to understand, especially about the residential status. FEMA also deals with various types of bank accounts, remittances, etc. This particular topic has drawn immense interest recently in many other overseas chapters also, and that's why it is highly relevant for all of us, not only till we all are outside India, but when we also plan to return to India, we have to do certain tax planning. So we look forward to an engaging, interactive, and insightful session. Now, before we proceed further, as I said, we have a special guest today, President of Indian Business and Professional Council, Mr. Azim Abbas sir. Now, amongst the Indian community, and especially among the business circle, his name, he doesn't need actually any introduction. He's a prominent Indian, being at the helm of the prestigious institute as prestigious IBPC, which is regularly conducting events and which is actually collaborating with Qatari government and the Indian ministries also in increasing the trade volume, in harnessing the I would say the advantage of all the strong Indian community which is over here. So, and we are also a very proud and privileged as a chapter to be associated with IBPC under the aegis of Indian Embassy. So, can I request Azim Abbas sir to please say a few words?
CA Nirlip Bhatt, Chairman, CA Ankit Agarwal, Vice Chairman, the newly elected ExCom of ICAI, eminent keynote speaker of today, CA Ved Jain, prominent chartered accountants of Qatar, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. On behalf of Indian Business and Professionals Council, IBPC, I take this opportunity to convey our heartiest congratulations to CA Nirlip Bhatt and his team on being elected as the new managing committee of the prestigious Doha chapter of Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. IBPC is proud to have ICAI as its associate member and is very proud of its elite and vibrant AO, which has more than 300 members who hold key positions in various private and public companies and are contributing to the growth of Qatar. Today's session on NRI taxation and FEMA is a very important topic as it has always been very complex, at least for me. People like me who have business interests in India go through a lot of hurdles. Even my CA has tough time finding answers to my questions regarding taxations for NRIs. IBPC was actively involved with fellow Indian business associations from the neighboring countries to send a memorandum to the Indian Prime Minister to discuss on the proposal and amendments in the budget of 2021 for non-residents Indians, especially on the amendment of NRI stay abroad, which was changed from 180 days to 240 days. I'm sure CA Jain will enlighten us on all such issues. On behalf of IBPC, I applaud the exemplary work done by the previous managing committee and assure our full support to the present MC. I wish you all a power-packed, knowledgeable evening. Stay safe, stay blessed. Thank you and Jai Hind.
Thank you, Azim sir, for your not only for your presence but a kind address to all of us. Now, before I move further and before our committee member CA Kishore takes over, I must tell you first of all the PowerPack team which we have. So you all know the management committee member, but probably you don't know the task which we all are handling. So CA Ankit Agrawal is not able to attend today's session, but he will work hand in hand with me in ensuring the strategic aspect of the chapter, in bringing to you the quality speakers and of course the family event, CSR event, in many new initiatives also. We have our secretary CA Vignesh Kalyan Raman, who is having a firm grip over all the compliance related issues. So he's going to spearhead the QFC compliance and IBPC compliance in communication with all the stakeholders, and also the very important sponsorship initiative. We have the financial governance related matters will be looked into by our chapter treasurer, CA Kamlesh Tibrewal. We have CA Kishore Alex, a very dynamic and dashing management committee member. He is our logistic in charge, and he is also been given the responsibility of handling the queries and the grievances of the CA student, I would say budding chartered accountants. We have CA Arun Somnath. I would call him a sports ambassador of the chapter, but he is handling a very important initiative and responsibilities which is pertaining to PR related areas. So he will be in charge of, and we are going a big bang on the PR related areas. You will see a lot of press reports. You will see the press coverage in the digital media also, social media also. So this is the responsibility of CA Arun. And then we have CA Devkinandan Tibrewal, who is going to organize the events, which is very close to our heart, isn't it? Family events, entertainment events, CSR events. He is in charge of this. We have CA Rakesh Baheti, a newly entrant into the committee, a very enthusiastic and committed ExCom member. He will be supporting mainly to CA Kishore and to CA Devkinathan in his respective towns. Now, friends, as I said in the AGM, that we are going to announce the fees for the current year. So we are also, before I announce the fees, we foresee that from July onwards, July or August onwards, we are going to have at least 3 or 4 physical events in the term, if everything goes well, and looking to the wisdom of the Qatari government, the way vaccination has been started, I'm sure that we'll be conducting the physical events. Our plan and our event calendar is structured in such a way that CA day we want to have in a physical manner, which will be from 1st July, which will be on 1st July. So that's our plan is that. So in this regard, I'm very happy to note that nearly 170 members have paid the last year fee, which is actually was completely waived off as announced by the previous committee headed by immediate past chairman C.S. Sandeep. This year, you have decided, management committee had decided to keep a fee at a very, very nominal rate of 200 Qatari Riyal for this year. Now, how it goes? So those 170 members who have paid 600 Riyal, they need not to pay anything to us. Again, we would like to thank them for all the support in this difficult time. For them, 400 Riyal will be carried forward for the year 2022. And 200 will consider the fee for the current year. So they will get the benefit for up to 400 in the next term also. For balance member, we have this membership strength of around 280, 290. Balance member, we request them to pay the fees of 200 Riyal by bank transfer. We will separately forward the bank details and everything by email and the WhatsApp group. So you may, because of the corona, we discouraged you all to pay the fees in a physical way or to committee members. It's not safe also. So please pay only by the bank transfer. And we also encourage you all. We are putting tireless efforts in this regard to bring new CA, new members to our chapter. We also request you to help us in expanding our membership base. If you know any CA who is in Qatar and is not yet been a member, please introduce him to us. We'll reach out to them. It's our plan to increase the membership strength of our chapter by around 10 to 20%. It's very ambitious plan, but I'm sure we'll be able to do it. So this is the 200 Riyal is the very nominal amount which we feel, and we seek your support. Ultimately, friends, money, and we all are finance people, as we know. Finance is the lifeblood of any organization, any institution. And at the same time, we also ensure you to bring the best of the speakers who will be resourced after a great forethought. And the events will not be limited only to the professional events. We don't want only to update you, but to upgrade you by certificate course, workshop, which we will roll out in a due course. And of course, the family event, fun event, entertainment, etc. And yes, how can I forget the international conference, which you also will see. So thank you for your understanding. And CA Kishore, thanks for your patience. Please.
Thank you, Nirlap. Good evening, dear fellow members. CA Ved Jain has been a man of prudence and intelligence since birth. Academically brilliant, he was a rank holder in both CA Inter and CA Final. A triple bachelor's degree holder, he completed his Bachelor of Science from Punjab University. A true follower of continuous professional education, after completing his CA in 1976, for the love of the subject, he did Bachelor's of Art in Economics in 1979. He also completed the Bachelor's of Law in 1980. A fellow member of ICA more than 4 decades, in the year 2008, he was elected as the president of ICA. During his tenure, ICA as one of the most known and dynamic institutions coming out with innovative ideas and actions. ICA enjoyed the best coordination with all ministries and officials. On international front, he was able to reach out all important bodies and institutions across. If I will complete his profile, I needed at least 30 to 40 minutes. So I am summarizing the major his achievements. He has been on the governing board and office bearer for the treasurer of Ramjas College, University of Delhi. He has been a treasurer of Public Health Foundation of India. He has been a board member of International Federation of Accounts. He has been a director on the board of National Aluminium Company Limited. His integrity and commitment towards society, he has been recognized and appreciated by the Government of India. He was appointed as the government nominee, director on the board of Matthias Infra Limited and Matthias Properties, the post Satyam episode to manage. He is being regularly consulted and member of various expert committees and panel constituted by the Government of India for the physical and commercial legislation. His talent has been appreciated by the media as well. I assure all fellow members, after this seminar, lot of takeaways such as NRI taxation, the recent amendments and impacts, exemption in respect of interest on NRI deposit as well as FCR deposit, determination of status of residents under a double taxation avoidance agreement as clearly mentioned by Asim Abbas. To delve upon some of these issues, we are privileged to have a speaker of eminence, CA Ved Jain. Please join me in welcoming CA Ved Jain. Over to CA Ved Jain.
Thank you, Mr. Alex. Thank you, Kishore.
Thank you.
Chairman of Doha chapter, Mr. Nirlep Bhatt. Chairman, Indian Trade Business Council, Mr. Azim Abbas. Very senior chairman of the Doha chapter, Mr. Farid. Vice Chairman, I believe, Ankit Agarwal, she in absentia. Mr. Vignesh, the Secretary. Mr. Kamlesh, the Treasurer. And the Executive Committee members, Mr. Kishore, Mr. Arun, Mr. Devki Nandan, Mr. Rakesh. All past chairmen, office bearers of the Doha chapter. My dear friend, professional colleagues, and I can see from the names appearing in the list on the participant, many participants appearing from the various other chapters of the ICI overseas, and also many members joining from India I can see on this issue. It's my proud privilege to be here and to be asked to speak on a topic of NRI taxation, which, as Mr. Azim Abbas says, continues to be a very challenging and always intriguing and complex, all these issues. I received a call, I think sometime 15-20 days back from the chairman, Mr. Nirlep, that he wants me to speak on this topic. Nirlepji has spoken to me, I believe last year, somewhere in August or September, during this, when this pandemic was at the peak, when his friend from Kailash Malkani called me up from the Japan, Tokyo, to deliver a talk on that this topic of NRI taxation on that issue. Friends, as we know that when budget 2021 was presented, there were a lot of expectation, a lot of issue which comes up on the budget of this issue. And when we have our Indian friends abroad, the interest is more on that side. Doha, Qatar has been, I think, of interest to all of us, and particularly to me, because I am very fond of this in your new channels, Al Jazeera, which is, I am looking into to get what kind of the first information on what is happening around the world. And because the three channels, CNN, BBC, and Al Jazeera on the TV Tata Sky channels are number 631, 633, 635. And I can make the comparison, the quality of the news and the independence information which is being provided. So that reminds me of my visit long time back, I believe, to which I had come to Doha, especially at that time, and to have a personal interaction. I was looking forward to be amongst you physically, but as we all know, there have been a compulsion because of this pandemic, coronavirus. So all travels are by suspended, physical meetings are not possible. But this gives an opportunity and also to interact with more and more members. When it is a physical meeting used to happen, you could meet only those who can physically travel and join that conference hall. But now you are across the world. So now it is almost 9:30 p.m. in India and 7 o'clock about in Doha at that time. But I believe many of our friends are awake at various places, listening and joining this program from there, where they are on this issue. Nirlepji, my voice is clear. I hope my sound is, my mic is clear. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Very clear. Very clear, sir. Perfect.
So that's I believe taxation, as I say, when a budget is presented, is always going to be a lot of expectation from the budget. From Indian perspective, I always wonder why people are so much interested in the budget. and that too in taxation. We have a population of more than 130 crore, out of which only 6 crore people pay taxes. And but still everyone is interested in the budget. Everybody is interested in knowing what is happening in taxation budget on this issue. And the challenge to the finance minister is always is too much. Everyone wants to have something out of the cake, and nobody wants that the size of the cake should go up by his contribution. Because you see, ultimately at the end of the budget, is an exercise of balancing exercise, receipt and payment. We all chartered accountant understand, if India is such a big country of 130 crore population, you need money to provide relief to the agriculturists, you need money to provide to industries, to banking, to poor people, social welfare, education, health, everywhere. And everyone want what you have given last year, give me something more. When something more is to be given, the cake size has to go on, somebody has to contribute more. But when it comes to coming to contribution, nobody will like that my contribution should go up. Just to put an interesting side of the story, if you just give it down, we come to the issue. There have been various people who have been saying, please substitute this income tax with some other tax on banking, whatever is withdrawn, whatever is into put in the bank, etc. You put a fixed percentage, it will be simple answer. I simply ask a question. Now, as on date, the rough figures, the rough estimates are, India is collecting roughly 12 lakh crore rupees of income tax. This tax is being paid by 6 crore people. I believe if I divide 12 lakh crore by 6 crore, everybody is contributing rupees 2 lakh, roughly, just an average contribution. I substitute this tax with another tax, whatever the tax may be, somebody will be required to contribute less than 2 lakh on an average. He will be very happy the new tax is good. But the country need 12 lakh crore rupees. So the moment somebody will be required to contribute instead of 2 lakh crore rupees, 1 lakh, I believe there will be another person who will be required more than 2 to 3 lakh rupees. He will say, oh, this tax is unhappy. He will be unhappy. So there is no way out. The tax has to be paid according to the capacity to pay, how much you earn. And that is why direct taxes is always considered and is worked out in a progressive tax. As you earn more, your capacity to pay increases. And that's why you must have seen in individual taxation, it is always a progressive tax rate. There is a threshold limit where you are not required to pay tax because that's a subsistence level you need to survive. And beyond that, if you earn, there is a fixed percent, 5, 10, 15, 20. As you earn more, it goes on that tax rate. That's a basic framework of a direct taxes on that part. And in that process, when a taxation policy is being planned, it is being planned in a manner where the country feel that I should collect taxes from the people who are supposed and who are required to pay the taxes. And in that direction, the first and the most important question comes up. My area, my jurisdiction, where I need to extend my jurisdiction, where I can levy tax. One is very simple. Whatever is being happening within the country, I should levy tax. That's the idea. But I believe human nature is very, very, I think, imperialistic. The moment you think that I need to collect taxes from within my jurisdiction, you try to find out ways and means, how can I expand my jurisdiction? How can I expand my jurisdiction? And in that process, we try to find out how can I get hold of the people who are outside India, who are outside my country. Now, there are various ways and means, various policies being followed. One may say, whosoever is my citizen of my country, wherever he lives in, I don't mind, he need to pay tax to me. America is one of the countries which say, if you hold my US citizenship, if you hold my green card, whatever is the global income you are having, you need to pay tax. I don't know which country you are living. If you are holding my American passport, you need to pay tax. There are countries which say, no, citizenship may not be a good idea. Whatever the income arises in my country, you need to pay tax on that income. But if you are a resident of my country, even if income accrues and rises to you outside India or outside my country, you need to pay tax. That is what the policy which India has been following on that. An interesting aspect is, first we create a scenario. Okay, look, these are the areas which I need to work it out and which I will tax, meaning thereby income which is within India, income of the people who are resident of India, but who are earning up abroad also, they need to pay tax in India. Okay. But then in order to mitigate the hardship, we enter into double taxation avoidance agreement and try to work it out that there is no double taxation. Having done so, thereafter again we try to find out ways and means how do we get out of this double taxation where we are losing taxes. This is a word which is being used by the tax administration. And the taxpayer try to work it out, how can I maximize my what can say return, minimize my tax liability. That is the challenge which is coming up and which is there. And this ding dong battle, this battle is going on for centuries and will continue to go on long centuries ago. I always used to wonder, in India, income tax was introduced way back in 1861. 1860. Income tax all over the world has been a creation of external aggression war or is something going wrong within the country. You will all know that we had in 1857, there was the first freedom fight, which we in Hindi call that Rani Lakshmi Bai or Jhansi Bai, that was the issue 1857. That was the first freedom fight India fought. And thereafter, till that time, India was being governed by the East India Company. And after that, in 1858, Queen Victoria Proclamation came. East India Company rule was taken over by the British Parliament and British Queen, and India became a part of the British domain. And in finance minister at that time, when he was preparing the budget for 1960-61, he found that there is a shortfall in the receipt of rupees 3 lakh, only 3 lakh rupees. And he introduced this income tax in India at that point of time. And to your surprise, every person earning in India more than 200 rupees per year, was required to pay a tax of 3 pi per rupees. And 3 pi was not paisa. It is not what paisa, 3%. Every rupee has to have 16 anna. 1 anna used to have 4 paisa, and there was 12 pi in 1 paisa. Just imagine, for a 3 lakh rupees, I think the gentleman who introduced in 1861 this income tax to India would never have wondered that after 150 years, so many people around India will be talking about this income tax. और हिंदी में मैं कभी कभी इस गाने को कहता हूं, खुदा भी आसमां से जब जमीन पे झांकता होगा, ये इनकम टैक्स किसने बनाया सोचता होगा. जो हिंदी फिल्म के गाने, I used to say on that point. That's a point which income tax creates a problem. And that's why we are all here to discuss all these issues, what this income tax is. And the challenge for non-resident is far, far bigger. We all being non-resident Indians, our citizenship is with the India, our loyalty, our attachment, family relations, bonding is with India. And naturally, we have an investment in India also. And that's why the challenge comes up to understand what this non-resident taxation is that way. And the challenge comes up when there is a complexity, when I look at the Income Tax Act and when I look at the what we call a FEMA, a Foreign Exchange Management Act. Nilesh, just give me 1 minute. Now I will just go to the share screen and will just slide my presentation. Just give me 1 minute, if you will. Can you see the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Is it visible?
Yes, it's clear.
Only thing is, how do I go down? This is the only. Yes, please. Now, coming to the topic which I will be discussing, when we talk of Indian Income Tax Act, you are a resident of India if you happen to be in India for 182 days or more, irrespective of the citizenship or whatever it is, you are a citizen of India if you happen to be in India for 182 days or more. This is the very simple formula. Second criteria is if you have been in India during the last 4 years for 365 days or more, but have been in India for 60 days or more, you are a resident. Either of these conditions should be fulfilled. And the third condition is that if you are an Indian citizen, then this period of 60 days will get extended to again 182 days if you have left India for the purpose of what we call job or vacation outside India during that period. That's a concession which has been given for that part. And then the fourth is that if you happen to be a Indian citizen and you are a non-resident as you are all, but you come back to India, you come to India for a visit, etc., then this condition earlier used to be that you can be in India for up to 182 days because you should not be more than 182 days. That's a condition which need to be fulfilled on this issue. This is, I'm just making it out a very simple criteria, which is entirely dependent on the number of days you have been in India for that particular period. Now, the last year budget 20 created another clause, which is a problematic clause and which has become a major challenge to, I believe, to all non-resident, particularly the non-resident in the Gulf countries, where in many of the countries there is no income tax, and when there is a country there is a tax, there are issues coming up about the residential status on that part. That's a challenge which has come up on that part. Now, the last year, just to apprise you, 2 amendments were made that in case you are an Indian citizen, you are a non-resident and you are settled abroad, no issue. But if you come back, if you come to India and your stay in India is 120 days or more, and your income in India is 15 lakh or more, exceeding 15 lakh rupees, then you will not be considered to be a full-fledged non-resident. I will consider you resident but not ordinary resident. This is a clause which has been created. Now the challenge has come up to all of you now in that regard, that you being a resident of, say, Qatar, because your stay in Qatar is, say, 200 days, something like this, etc., and you want to come to India during the year for 120 days or more, and incidentally, if your income in India is more than 15 lakh rupees, Indian income which we are talking of, then your status may not be that of a non-resident. You will be a resident but not ordinary resident. That's a challenge which has come up on that part. This is the challenge which is I will be talking to you or later on, but this is one of the definition which is creating a problem. Now, this is the income tax. Now, when I go to the FEMA, this definition is something different. Now, in FEMA, as we say, what is how you become a non-resident? A person residing in India for more than 182 days during the year is a non-resident, is a resident, but he will not be a resident. Now, this is very reverse definition, but does not include a person who has gone out of India or who stays out in India, in either case, for on taking up employment outside India. Meaning thereby, if I leave India, say on 25th March 2021, and my stay in India during the year was 365 days, 360 days, but still I will be a non-resident on 26th of March to 2021 when I land up in Doha for taking up employment in Doha. That is the FEMA says. Or I land up in Doha for carrying on outside India business or vacation. Maybe I want to set up a business therein. Or I land up in Doha, not for a job, not for a business, but in such circumstances which indicate that my intention to stay there is uncertain period. So meaning thereby, under the FEMA Act, the moment I leave India for the purpose of settling abroad, I become a non-resident, and this clause of 182 days is not applicable. Another factor which is applicable is there may be people who may come to India. It is going out. People who may come to India and their stay in India may exceed 182 days, but still he will not be a resident of India under the FEMA if he has not come up for taking employment in India. If he has not come up, somebody lands up in India for some other purpose, for a medical treatment, something like this, etc., and his stay in India is more than 182 days here, but still he will be not a resident. It will be a non-resident of FEMA because he has not come for employment, he has not come up for business, and he has not come up with an intention to live in India for an uncertain period. This clause is applicable as on date in respect of all people who have stuck up in India. Now take this case. There may be many foreign citizens or foreign peoples, or maybe many people like you who have come to India here and got stuck up because the flights are not available. You are doing job outside. You have not come back to India for a job. You have not come for a vacation here in India, and you are not here for an uncertain period. Your stay here is in India, stuck up because of the pandemic. You cannot take the flight. Similarly, there is a situation, a person who has gone outside India for uncertain period, but in India he stays 182 days, still he will not be not a non-resident. So he will get a full benefit under the FEMA law, and he will continue to be a non-resident for the purpose of FEMA. So, and not a resident, so that benefit of that. Now coming back to your situation, now the moment you have come to India for a person new India, what are your obligations when you become a non-resident? There are different obligations when you become a non-resident from Indian tax perspective, Indian income tax perspective, and from FEMA perspective. Now coming first to issue, what are the issues which arises when you become a non-resident under the FEMA law? The FEMA says the moment you become a non-resident, you are required to convert your bank account, what is normally a saving account or fixed deposit account, to NRO account. This is a mandatory requirement under the FEMA law. So all my friends who are listening to this program, in case since you are all now by and large non-resident, and if you are having any bank account in India not converted to NRO account, then there is a violation of FEMA. And the violation of the FEMA rule says that if you have not intimated and converted this account, penalty of an amount equal to 3 times of the amount involved, or rupees 2 lakh in case the amount is uncertain, or rupees 5,000 per day can be levied. I believe one must be very careful under the FEMA law to convert Indian account into NRO account, which is considered to be non-resident account. Similarly, the law mandate that you must, in case you are holding shares, then you must intimate to the demat agencies or the whatever the at CDCL or NSDL that your status has changed from resident to a non-resident account. Now, another issue is that non-resident are not supposed to open a new PPF account. If there was a PPF account when you were a resident and later you have become a non-resident, then you can continue with that PPF account. But once you have become a non-resident, thereafter you cannot open a PPF account. That's another area which we need to look into that aspect. But there are accounts like a national pension scheme, etc. You can continue to hold. Further, as a non-resident, you can continue to hold any Indian currency, security, immovable property, or any asset which you have acquired or which has been inherited by you when you are a resident, because you can continue. So whatever you have left here or what you have left later on by inheritance comes to you, you can continue to hold that asset. That's the obligation which is under the FEMA law. And another FEMA law introduces, once you have become a non-resident, you cannot buy foreign currency from the Indian sources, because foreign currency, then you need to spend all your expenditure, etc., from the money which you have been earning from outside India or from your NRO account which you are maintaining in India. But you cannot buy currency, Indian currency or foreign currency in India on that part. That's the obligation which is there all for non-resident. So these are the obligations which you need to fulfill and need to comply with when you are a non-resident under FEMA. And now coming to Indian law income tax, what are the obligations? If you happen to be a non-resident under the Indian income tax law. As I say, under the Indian income tax law, you can be a non-resident if you are in India for less than 182 days, or you have been left out of India for job, etc., whatever the 4 factors I have explained, then you are required to file income tax return if your income exceed rupees 2,50,000 rupees before claiming exemption under Chapter 6A, which is regarding LIC premium, PPF, etc., or any other exemption under Section 54, etc. There are various exemptions. Then you are duty bound to file your income tax return in India. You are, in case you have deposited more than 1 crore rupees in current account in more than one bank account, then there is an obligation on you to file return in India also. There is an obligation to file return if you have incurred an expenditure of rupees 2 lakh or more, or any person for travel in one country, then you are also liable to file the income tax return in India. And if you have incurred an expenditure of more than 1 lakh rupees toward consumption of electricity in India, then you are also required to file a return. I will go basically that if your income in India is exceeding rupees 2,50,000 rupees, then you need to file the return, and it is mandatory for filing. But while filing this return, you are not required to disclose your foreign income, foreign assets, etc. Obligation to disclose foreign income and foreign assets is only on resident or not on non-resident. That's a legal requirement which is mandated. These are 2 different provisions which works in 2 different directions. What is the FEMA requirement, and one is the income tax requirement on that part. Now, having said so, now what type of account as a non-resident you are entitled to have it? You may be wondering. We all know, I believe many of you may be, because living in, I think Doha for a long time in Qatar, and you may be aware it. Normally, there are 3 types of account which a non-resident have in India. One is a NRO account, which is a rupee account, which where Indian income gets coming in. Second is FCNR account, foreign currency non-resident account. The money which you earn in Doha or Qatar and you send it back to India, and you want to keep it in a what we call as a foreign currency, in the whatever dollar, pound, or whatever or real, etc. Whatever the currency you want to keep, you can keep that account. Whatever interest you earn on that account is exempt. It continues exempt. Similarly, there's a NRE account, non-resident external account, which is called a rupee account, but it comes with a foreign currency which you have been earning, and you can send to NRE account on that part. In that account also, it is a rupee account. Rate of interest is little higher, but then there is a currency risk, because in case the dollar appreciate, the value of your rupee may go down. So that account you can keep also. These are 3 accounts. The other 2 accounts may not be relevant. Special non-resident rupee account is for those non-resident who want to keep do business in India. They can open a current account without any interest being paid or received, but just to facilitate the transaction. They can bring money, they can take away the money for the purpose of import, export, etc. Escrow is for particular purpose of business transaction where you want to do an escrow. These are the account which I'm talking about, the 3 accounts, and what are the obligation and what type of regime. The one is eligibility. Non-resident can open this account, what we call all this account, and income account to transfer for this NRE account or FCNR account. Only the foreign income can come, no, nothing else can come. And then this is a rupee denominated, this is a foreign currency dominated. I can just skip it out on that part. Now, Indian law permits that you can transfer money. What you can do now, these are the 2 accounts where you can use what NRE, NRO account. Over NRE and FCNR account, you can do whatever you want to do it. But for NRO account also, there is a lot of exemption which has come now. It is now you can transfer to NRO account $1 million. You can bring it $1 million per annum on that purchase. All current year income you can get it transferred from India on that part. The Indian government has allowed that process also. So, and these are the various facility which has been given by India on that part. These are the, I am talking about it. If you, whatever the current income you are having in India, rent, dividend, pension, interest, it is now repatriable. You can bring it back to Doha, or you can take it, work it out. Later on part, time permitting, I will talking about some tax planning measure on that part, looking to the particular situation of the tax law in Doha, which I started. One big opportunity which is given in this type of program is that while before addressing this program, you need to read out something about the local tax law, and you get a lot of know of what is happening in what we call in Qatar and what is the Qatar tax law is. So I will be talking to you later on about some tax planning measure on this issue. This is just from the Indian perspective, both from the FEMA perspective, that this NRO account is a non-repatriable account, but you can transfer the current income which get deposited in NRO account because you are not home. You may be earning rent, you may be earning interest, you may be having other income in India, which get deposited in the NRO account. That income of the current year after paying taxes can be repatriated to your account wherever you want outside. Up to US dollar per 1 million per financial year is allowed. Otherwise also as a sale proceed, etc. of others allowed. Beyond that, you can get it transferred outside India with RBI approval in special circumstances. So this is a permission given under FEMA law. Now this is, I don't think special non-resident account I talked about is a business account I can see you. Now this is the slide we just have like to share the tax rates in India, 5%, 20%, 30%. I believe all of you may be knowing about this. And that when you have an India income, you need to pay taxes on the Indian income, and that income you cannot get with concession. Now, there are certain concessions which are available only to a non-resident. And two concessions which I believe all of you are aware is interest which you are earning on NRE account, interest which you are earning or FCNR account is fully exempt in India. So you need not pay tax in India on that part of the. In addition thereto, there are certain instruments which Indian government has issued, whereby also the tax rate is almost negligible, 4% or 5%, etc. The biggest challenge which has come up is regarding the dividend income, which you have been maybe earning on the investment which you have made in India. Now, as we see, till 31st March 2020, dividend income was exempt in India, because the dividend distribution tax was payable by the company, not by the shareholder. But from 1st April 20, now dividend income is chargeable to tax in the hands of a shareholder. So any of you as a non-resident have made investment in Indian companies. Now that dividend which you are receiving as per the Indian income tax law is chargeable to tax at the rate of 20%. But India has entered into double taxation avoidance agreement with the Qatar, and as per that agreement, tax on dividend income will be at the rate of 10% only. So if you are a resident of a Qatar and you get a certificate that you are a tax resident of a Qatar, and then whatever the dividend income you are earning from India, that income will be chargeable to tax at the rate of 10%. Same is the provision for the interest income other than FCNR. FCNR is exempt, NRE is exempt. But if you have any other interest income, you may have invested in public sector bond or other something like this, etc., to get a higher rate of return. Then in that cases, your tax rate is 10% under treaty. This is the benefit being as a non-resident, you being a benefit. Oh, you being a resident of Qatar. Now, these are the various funds which I need not mention because I don't think any of you may be investing it. Some may be doing it interest received from infrastructure debt fund, business trust, etc., where the rate is 5%, 5%. Dividend and interest, Indian law says 20%, but in the treaty it is 10%. So treaty rate will be applicable. The 10% will be applicable. Now, these are the rates which are applicable in respect of capital gain, etc. We all know long term is 10%, short term is 15%. Other is 20%. So that's a listed share on this issue. Now the challenge which comes up, the challenge which has come up is the DTAA between India and Qatar. Some of you may be aware of this and whatever. As I understand now, how do I decide of which country I'm a resident and where the tax has to be levied? As I have understood, under the Qatar tax laws, if I go to that Qatar tax law, now a person is considered to be resident on the right hand side in the Qatar tax law. a natural person is defined as resident if one meets any of the following conditions. He has a permanent home in the state of Qatar, has been in the state of Qatar for more than 183 consecutive or separate days during any 12-month period, or has one center of vital interest in the state of Qatar. Vital interest means where you have an economic and family relations more stated there. So under the Qatar tax law, what is stated is that you will be considered to be a resident of Qatar if you happen to be in Qatar for 183 days or more during the year, or you have a permanent resident, even if you have not been for 183 days or more, or you have more your economic and family relationship in Qatar, then you will be considered to be a resident of Qatar. Now, as against this, I have given you a definition of Indian tax law, where Indian tax law says that you will be considered to be a resident of India if you happen to be in India for 182 days or more, or you have been in more than 365 days out of the last 4 years, in India more than 60 days or more than 120 days. So there is a possibility that a person may get caught to become a resident of both the countries. There is a possibility that a person may get caught to be a resident of both the country. Then the TT says in such a situation, the tiebreaker rule is applied. Now, whichever beneficial is there, and if a tiebreaker rule is to be applied, then these are the 4 conditions which need to be step by step checked. First, which country you will be considered to be resident, whereby reason of the paragraph 1, meaning thereby by the treaty, an individual is resident of both the contracting state, then he shall be deemed to be the resident of the state in which he has a permanent home available to him. If you have permanent home, does not mean that your ownership of the home should be there, but there should be a home which should be available to you for uncertain period, whether you have taken it rent or not. That's the issue. So suppose now you are in Qatar, you don't have a home in India. You come to in India, you stay with your parents, or you stay with your friends, etc., or you stay in hotel. But you are employed in Qatar and you have a home therein. So then you will be considered to be a resident of Qatar only because you have a permanent home level. But there is a possibility that a person may be having a permanent home in both the countries. Maybe in Qatar also, you may be having a home in India. And then he say a person shall be deemed to be resident of the state in which he has personal and economic relations and center of vital interest, but we normally in technical language call. Personal means where your family member lives, where your more investment is there, where your children are there, where your education children are taking up, all these issues there. But there is a possibility that on this also there may be a tie. Tiebreaker, I believe, rule we know what is a tiebreaker. In T20 we have seen it. When both teams score equal runs, then we say that let us play 1 over more each, and whosoever scores more in that run, that he will be a tiebreaker rule. And even then there is still a tie, then we say no. Now whosoever has played more 6s or more 4, then he will be a winner like this. So that's a tiebreaker rule. You must be knowing the World Cup which was played in T20 between England and New Zealand. So same rule will apply. If the state in which he has a center of vital interest cannot be determined, or if he has not a permanent home available, he shall be deemed to be resident in which he has a habitual abode. Habitual abode means where you have a heritage of Pura, habitually you are abiding therein. That will be one of the criteria to decide that yes, you are habitually residing in Qatar, and that is your habitual abode. India is not habitual abode, so that you will be a resident of Qatar. But even then, if the tie is there, then the last tiebreaker rule is of which country you are a resident, of which country you are a national, meaning thereby you are resident. If by and large, I believe you are all resident of a citizen of India. So if that tiebreaker rule comes into play, then you will be declared to be a resident of India on that basis, on that issue. Now, these are the situations. This residential status, now you will be asking me why I'm talking on this residential status so much. Because now the rule which have been amended in India has made the situation little difficult on that basis. Earlier, it was 182 days you could be in India, less than 182 days, meaning 181 days, you can be free now. But now from 1st April 20 onward, if you happen to be in India for 120 days or more, and your income in India is 15 lakh rupees or more, then you will not be a full-fledged non-resident. And if you are not a full-fledged non-resident, then you will not be able to take the benefit of DTAA. Your income in India, which is chargeable to tax at a concessional rate like dividend at 10%, interest income at 10%, will become chargeable to tax at a 20%. There are certain other benefits which are available as a non-resident. Those benefits will not be available. However, I must say, interest on FCNR and other interest will continue to be exempt on that part. That factor does not change on that part. So the one lesson, I believe, one lesson which we need to learn, I believe, after the amendment is that in case you are a resident of a Qatar and you are working therein, and you happen to visit India less than 120 days, no change, you can continue, your status as a non-resident will continue. But for one reason or the other reason, maybe because you have a family relation, maybe because your parents are old, you want to visit more, or your children are getting educated in India, or there are other assets you want to do it, and you happen and you are required to be in India for 120 days or more, but less than 182 days, then please make sure that you do not have income in India exceeding rupees 15 lakhs. I believe this is a negative impact which has come up from the Finance Act 2020. Asking Indian citizens who are abroad and not to make more investment in India or withdraw investment from India because income, otherwise you will become a resident. I believe that's a challenge. Though the law says you are not a resident, but your status changes from resident but not ordinary resident. And the moment your status changing from resident but not ordinary resident, the treaty benefits are denied. If treaty benefits are denied, your income like dividend interest will become chargeable to tax at a higher rate of 20% or normal rate, whatever it is, but you will not get the benefit of the treaty. That's the issue. This is the biggest disadvantage. I'm working it out on that basis. I just wonder, I have been crying on this issue, why we want our non-resident Indian not to make investment in India. Years after year, we have been making amendment to the various income tax provision for inviting FDI, FPI investment in India, like giving exemption even to sovereign fund, etc., etc. Non-resident Indians are the most, I believe, the best way to get investment in India. Reducing their investment in India so that they do not make investment in case they want to be in India for 120 days or more, I believe is not in the overall interest. I consider it a penny wise and pound foolish on that aspect. This is my interpretation. I may be wrong on that part on this issue. And why I say so? Why I say so? The reasons are obvious. We all Indians have, wherever we may be settled, maybe in whichever part of the world is, but our attachment with India is always there, always there. Or in that direction, I am reminded of an old Hindi song in Kabuliwala. You would have heard it. तेरे दामन से जो आए उन हवाओं को सलाम, चूम लूं मैं उस जवा को जिस पे आए तेरा नाम. That's a feeling which we all Indians carry with us about India, and that's why whatever the money we are earning, we first try to make investment in India. And but by bringing this provision of 182 to 120 days, is somewhere is a dampener. I could say yes, if you are more than 120 days, irrespective of your income, you will be treated as a resident. Then it would have made some sense. But you say 15 lakh rupees for a consultant like me, the immediate advice to my all dear friend will be a non-resident. If you want to enjoy this benefit, please make sure that you don't have income in India exceeding 15 lakh rupees. If you have a rental income, make sure that your rental income is switched over. If you have some capital gain, you make sure, because there can be a different year. In 1 year, you may have more, in another year more. Now, capital gain is chargeable to tax. You are holding investment in share in some company, and you want to sell the share, and your income may go beyond 15 lakh rupees in India. So you lose the status. So that's I believe that's a issue. Idea was to get hold of few people who are manipulating it. But in the process, what we have done is injustice to the more than 99% people who are the non-resident. That's the issue which is there on that. Now, having said so, now let me come to some other aspect on this issue. These are the benefit which I get in treaty. Under the treaty, as I have understood, in India, whatever the capital gain arises, shares I need to pay tax, mutual fund I need to pay tax, dividend I need to pay tax, interest other than FCNR, NRI I need to pay tax. Only and immovable property income I need to pay tax on that part. As against this, if I look at this Qatar, this Qatar follows operated territorial taxation system, meaning thereby whatever income accrues in a Qatar only, that is taxable. Whatever income accrues outside Qatar is not at all taxable. Individually taxable in Qatar if he has generated qualifying Qatar source income regardless of his tax residence. Income tax not imposed on employed individual salary, wages and allowances. Whatever the salaries you are getting, that's not subject to tax. A self-employed individual may be subject to income tax if one tries qualifying income from source in Qatar. Gross income of Qatar natural person resident is exempt. Now this is the provision as on date. Now what will be a advice to all of you for the tax planning on that issue? What I understand is, if you have income in India, you are liable to pay tax in India. If you have income in Qatar, other than salary, wages, etc., you may be liable to pay tax in India because you are not the what we call citizen of Qatar on that. But if you have income in a country other than India, other than Qatar, then that income, if not chargeable to tax in that country, will be exempt income. I believe I am clear on this issue, but I am talking about it. If I make money in Qatar, I make money in India, and India now permit $1 million per year to be repatriated outside India by a non-resident. India permit current year income, whatever I earn in India, to be repatriated outside India. Qatar says if you earn any income outside Qatar, I have nothing to do with, I will not charge tax. So the message on tax planning will be to invest in those countries where you have the maximum return, but there is no tax. And these are the countries which I have given in my graph. There are many countries where this, I believe, the investment is made and you keep a trust, etc. Income will not be chargeable to tax. Only thing is one need to be very careful that whenever you are investing money in those countries, how secure your investment will be and how much return you will be able to make it out. I believe there are many countries which I have seen in India like BVI, etc., where the money is reasonably safe and working it out on this basis. So this is a message which comes up out of this, I believe, as I said, that what need to be done and how the tax planning on that part need to be taken care of it in India. This I have already dealt with, and that's 180 to 120 days I've just talked about on that part. This I can skip it out. Now, this I have given one example. If you can understand, maybe I think some of my chartered accountant friends, maybe non-chartered may find it difficult. Look what happens in case I happen to be in India for 120 days or more, and how my tax liability can change. Just look at this slide. I have a rental income from property situated in India of 20 lakh rupees. If I happen to be in India 120 days or 182 days, either it is taxable. Interest income received from an Indian company on rupee denominated bond, 40 lakh rupees I've received, it is chargeable to tax, but 5% in case I'm a non-resident. Interest payable on a unit located in IFCI where income is exempt for a non-resident, 40 lakh rupees exempt, otherwise chargeable to tax. Dividend income from India, Indian company, 60 lakh rupees. If I am a non-resident, then it is 10%, otherwise at the normal rate. Interest on FCNR account 20 lakh will be continue to be exempt under both the situation, and income accruing and rising Qatar salary, dividend, etc., it will not be taxable in India. Now the total income in case my stay in India is less than 120 days is 1 crore 20 lakh rupees, and the tax liability is 13 lakh 32,000. But in case in the same situation, by incidence I happen to be in India for 120 days or more, that income will go up to my 1 crore 60 lakh, and my tax liability will go from 13 lakh to 55 lakh. Same facts. This is the implication which is coming out of this amendment which I am working. My tax liability goes down 4 times on that part. So the takeaway is, make sure that your visit to India, in case you are in the Indian income is more than 15 lakh rupees, is less than 120 days, or in the alternative, make sure if you happen to be in India for 120 days or more, your income in India is less than 15 lakh rupees. That's a takeaway in the. Then there is another area which probably may not be of much interest to you. People who are stateless person to be considered deemed resident. Now, this is a new phenomena last year created, and this budget has also created a further problem on that respect. I believe Qatar levy tax, and you are liable to tax in Qatar for that purpose. So probably this clause may not hit you. But in Gulf countries where there is no income tax, I believe this clause is going to hit like anything. Now, the India says, if you happen to be an Indian citizen and you are not liable to pay tax in any other country, because of your domicile or residence, which will include country where there is no tax, not liable to tax, and then your Indian income is more than 15 lakh rupees, then you will be deemed to be a resident of India, and then all the same clauses will be applicable. I believe this clause is going to create a much bigger challenge to the people who are in country where there is no tax and there is absolute exemption on tax part. And this, as in the budget 2021, there was earlier some confusion whether it will be covered or not covered, but now not liable to tax having been defined, so that will create a problem, I believe, for the people on this issue. Now, I would just like to deal with one more aspect. I talked about under FEMA, I talked about under income tax, what you need to do when you leave India, become a non-resident. Many of our friends will be returning to India also. There is a situation when you happen to be a non-resident, but you want to come back to India, what you can do, what you need to do, and what type of tax planning is required. Returning India, what we call it, safe landing in India, which we use the word. Now, they're under what FEMA, what permit FEMA? A person a resident in India may hold or foreign currency or security if such currency was acquired hold by when he was a resident outside India. So meaning thereby, if you have made investment outside India when you are a non-resident and you have made investment, security, etc., you can continue to hold when you have become a resident in India. So this FEMA gives you permission, it's not required for that person. Secondly, foreign currency account open can be continued, income earned through employment, income earned in investment, income from gift, etc. You can continue to hold it out. Now, what is required to be done? The moment you land in India after becoming a resident, as you have to declare, convert your saving account or fixed deposit account in another account, you are required to convert another account to a normal account. You have to redesignate it because now you have become a resident on that part. Your NRE account has also to be converted into an ordinary account. You cannot continue to hold an NRE account. But now the NRE account, before you land in India, you need to get it converted into FCNR account, because FCNR account is allowed to be continued even after you become resident. Just I hope you please try to understand the situation. Because when you land in India, your status will be in first 2 years, by and large, will be resident but not ordinary resident. Having said so, interest earned on FCNR account will continue to be exempt. Secondly, there is a possibility that after you have landed in India, you may not feel that I will like to go back, maybe 6 months, year, 1.5 years. So if your all money get converted into a rupee account, you may have a challenge to get it converted again into dollar or a pound account, etc. For that purpose, your saving, your NRO account in any case has to be converted into the ordinary account, but get the NRE account converted into FCNR account, and FCNR account can continue when you are a non-resident but not ordinary resident, and interest earned thereon will still continue to be exempt because this exemption is available to resident but not ordinary resident account. You need to get the converted on that part also. Another advice will be that there is an account which we call resident foreign currency account. You can open that resident foreign currency account also, and you can continue keep the money in that resident foreign currency account, and that account you can take back the money as and when you want to take back the money on that money. Now, what is the tax planning required to be done when you back to a lender? Now, under the this will happen to you, which was non-taxable will become taxable once you are later. So first 2 to 3 years, you will not be taxable income accruing arising outside India, etc., etc. And what you need to do is, for that purpose, whatever the investment you are having outside India, please realize the capital gain before you become a resident. Now, suppose in Qatar or Dubai, Doha, you are holding certain investment. You have invested, say, $10,000. Now, the value of that investment has become, say, $50,000. If you sell that investment while you are in Doha, $40,000 income will be exempt, will not be chargeable to tax. But if you come back to India and become a resident, and thereafter you sell this investment of $10,000, thereafter $50,000, in the year in which you sell, you being a resident, then the $40,000 you will be required to pay tax part also. So advice on safe lending is that please make sure that your capital investment, if you can realize it, that sell it out, buy it again, and the value goes up. Whatever the income accrues, if you may continue to invest $10,000, $50,000, you sell it before you become a resident. And if you want to retain it outside, please retain, but at a new value. Your then old value gets substituted by the new value, income has accrued for that part. So this is the situation which we need to keep. And so these are the points which we need to keep it. Once you become a resident, your worldwide income will become taxable. Income and asset must be appropriately reported to avoid and penalty and persecution. Once you become a resident, then while filing the income tax return, you are duty bound under Indian income tax law to declare all your foreign investment. There is a special column in the Indian income tax return which require to declare all bank account, all investment, not only those bank account or investment which you are the owner, but also those bank account or investment where you have a power of attorney or you are a signatory to that. Even your spouse is the owner, but you are a signatory to that. These are some of the issues which I wanted to just discuss with you. I believe, Nirlep, I have taken time. We can have some question answer session on that part, because there will be some maybe issues on that part. What will be required on that part? Nirlep.
Yes, sir. Myself, Kamlesh here. I'll be taking the question and answers. Thank you for that session. And it was indeed a very unique session. And like you mentioned, कि खुदा भी जब आसमान से देखता होगा, income tax किसने बनाया सोचता होगा. That is quite true. And I'll say you why this is true, because this is a unique case where I saw questions being posed by the members even before the session started. And the other unique thing that I noted, many of the questions were answered by the members themselves. You know, all are practicing or chartered accountants.
No, all are chartered accountants.
Resist. Yes, so they could not resist the solution. However, we have some quick Q&A. I will take them. One thing, sir, which you said is about the returning Indians, and we do not need to file the returns income which we have earned outside India. And suddenly when we return, there is a huge corpus with us, which is in the NRE account or NRO account, and we convert it back to Indian rupee or to an ordinary account, and we invest and file return, and suddenly the income is huge. And in that case, if there is some scrutiny or something, then what are the records that we should keep? Is the bank statement enough, or any other process that needs to be followed to verify that the income was earned outside India?
I believe that's a very sensitive issue. In case your income is commensurate, your wealth or investment which you are bringing is commensurate with the income which you have been earning, I think then only the bank statement will help you out. But in case there is something beyond that, then further evidences may be required. I am of the people, I am of the view, in case you are a salaried employee, etc., you getting an employment certificate and they show that you have been getting a reasonably good salary, then obvious presumption will be that these represent the saving from your income, salaries, etc. Challenges comes up when you have a business like that with income, and then in a country like where there is no tax on business income, etc. Those challenges. But in the Qatar, I believe there is a tax on business income in Qatar. So the person will definitely be filing the tax return. So on that basis, also one can support that the income has been earned outside India.
Another question, sir, that we have is when the person is coming out of India into abroad, and there he has a normal this thing account, like you said, but there is also a case where he has a Hindu undivided family account and he's filing returns, and he may have a bank account in terms of HUF in India. So what will be the status of that HUF, the return filing, as well as the bank accounts that he's holding in India?
See, HEF status goes with the Karta ji. In case there is a HEF account which is there, it is a separate entity. And as I said, the obligation as is on a individual, the same obligation is on the HEF. So there is no independent obligation on the HEF independently. It goes in line with the obligation of the individual. If an HEF is earning income in India, it is required to file the return. It is required to pay taxes on their own.
Okay, sir. And another question, sir, which you had clarified, but there is a question on that regarding the NPS and PPF. Like PPF, you had mentioned that you can hold till the maturity. One of the questions was, can NRI renew PPF account beyond 15 years after maturity, or it has to be mandatorily be closed?
It has to be closed, I believe. That's a mandate, because then extension is as good as new account, because there have been a lot of confusion in it. Earlier, a circular has come from the PPF authorities, I believe in 2017, saying that PPF account by NRE need to be closed. But later on in 18, they clarified further that no PPF account can continue if you have opened the account at a time when you are a resident. So now the clarity is that, but extension cannot be, I believe.
Okay, and there were a couple of questions relating to returns coming out or in.
But I may just clarify, may not be relevant for the Qatar resident because there is no tax on overseas income in Qatar. But if you happen to have a PPF account in India where interest on PPF is exempt, but if you have and you happen to be a resident of a country where overseas income is chargeable to tax like USA, so you may be required to pay tax on PPF interest also in that country. So for those people who are resident of USA or a European country, something like this, my friend NRI non-resident, where they are liable to pay tax on the global income. So income exempt in India will be liable to tax in those countries. Interestingly, I may just add here, India has a India-Qatar treaty has a special clause, what we call a tax-sparing treaty, a tax-sparing clause, which is a technical term which you call use. If income in India is exempt under any provision, in Qatar, tax cannot be levied because income is exempt. Similarly, if in Qatar, an Indian has earned any income, I being a resident of India, I set up a plant or something like this in Qatar, and I earn an income of that, and that income in Qatar is exempt under a special clause because there is some trade zone, etc. Now that income cannot be taxed in India because there is a tax sparing. We use a technical word, tax sparing. So under tax sparing, had I been in that country paid taxes to that extent, that had that exemption not been there, to that extent I will get the benefit. So that's the special provision that shows the treaty has a special relationship with Qatar on that. India-Qatar treaty has a special relationship that part. India used to have a similar arrangement with, I believe, Bangkok, which was Thailand, which was later on amended. We have something similar in UK treaty also, to some extent, where we have a benefit of this FCNR, etc. like this also.
So one other question regarding, sir, which you had already mentioned, was regarding that you can continue to hold property outside India when you are a non-resident, even after you return back to India. And now say I return back to India and I continue to hold this property for say 5-6 years and then I sell it. Will the repatriation of those funds be exempt, or there will be some taxation at that point of time after say 5-6 years after returning?
No, the law is very clear. The moment you become a resident, wherever your income arises, you will be required to pay tax. I give you an example. So in 2009, when you shifted to Doha, and there you, after in 2011, you purchase a property, say for $20,000. And in 2021, you return back to India. And in 2024, when you are Indian resident, or 22 when you're resident, now you sell that property which you have purchased for $20,000 for say $1 million. So you will be required to pay tax of the difference of 1 million minus $20,000 in India. But under FAMA, you will be allowed to retain the money outside India and invest somewhere else. That's a benefit which has been given. Swapping has been allowed for that purposes also.
And so some questions were on this mutual funds, whether NRIs can claim the benefit of indexation when capital gains taxes are rising when they sell in India.
See, the law as on date, if I have, there may be two questions of on mutual fund. See, as a indexation benefit is always available because non-resident can always avail those benefits which are available to resident. Because treaty clearly says you cannot discriminate. So that benefit is available. But I believe the question will be, since dividend income is chargeable to tax at the rate of 10% under the treaty, whether the mutual fund income will also be liable to tax at the rate of 10%. Though there is a direct judgment on this issue, which says the mutual fund has the same basis the way a dividend is on equity share is given. So the mutual fund will also be chargeable to tax at the rate of 10% on that part. Though there can be some, I think, litigation on this issue, but even otherwise under treaty, it is chargeable to tax at a rate of 20%, not at the normal rate.
Okay, sir. And one question we have on the global income, the member is asking whether global income of resident and not ordinarily resident is taxable in India?
No. Just let me clarify the issue. To whom we consider resident but not ordinary resident. See, there are, if we look at the Indian tax law, it clearly says in the case of a resident, it is a global income. Income which accrues or arises in India, income which is received in India, which accrues or arises outside India or received outside India. That is a global income for resident. For non-resident, the law is very serious. Income which accrues or arises in India or received in India, that is only chargeable to tax. But in the case of a resident but not ordinary resident, there is one extension which has been added. Only it is the income which is earned in India, received in India, or also income which accrues or arises outside India from a business or a profession set up in India. I will give you an example of our leading advocate, Mr. Harish Salve. Now he is practicing from London. So now there is a challenge that whether the profession has been set up in India or London. So allegation will be that he has set up the profession in India and now he is earning from London. So that income should be chargeable to tax because as a resident but not ordinary resident. And let me clarify, this status of resident but not ordinary resident is not a permanent status. It is a transitory provision. A person is considered to be a resident but not ordinary resident if he has been a non-resident in 9 out of the last 10 years. He has to be, or a person who has been in India for less than 730 days, which use not more than 729 days in last 7 years. So this benefit is available. The third category of person has been now coming up is this by this last amendment, a person who happened to be in India for 120 days or more and who has earned more than 15 lakh rupees in India, Indian source income, which we call it. This is the income. But my point on this point is that if you fall in this category of resident but not ordinary resident, you may call yourself to be a non-resident, but you do not get the benefit of treaty. Then your tax rate and exemption will be decided by the Indian tax law. In the case of dividend, that income may become chargeable at a rate of 36%, not at a 20% even, which is under the Indian law, or 10%. So that is the disadvantage which follows. That's the challenge which is coming.
Correct, right, sir. Sir, one question regarding this new provision which has come in the budget regarding this one-person company or the company's law. Can we repatriate funds from this one-person company outside India?
No, see how you will be repatriating it. The question will be that if you make a one-person company here, this can be a good mechanism to work out to defeat this 15 lakh provision one way. Because then your one company income will be different than the company income of the individual, I believe. Now, when you set up a one-person company, you will be required to pay tax on its income on the company. So you may be, I think the new rate is 25%, 22% plus that you can pay. Now, company cannot repatriate because company is not outside. Company will pay dividend to its shareholder. So company will declare a dividend and you being a non-resident, and then 10% tax will be required withheld at your level, at that level, and then you can repatriate it. You can take it.
Okay.
So you are
So
100
one
rupees,
of, yep.
75,
Go
25,
ahead,
you
go
pay
ahead, sir.
there,
Yep.
and 10% you can take it away.
Okay. And sir, one of the most common questions which we have been also asked here, and today also people are asking, regarding transfer of funds to the spouse account, generally wife's account. Should we transfer from here directly to wife's NRE account, or should we transfer to India and from our account transfer to the wife's account? In which case the clubbing provisions won't apply, and what will be beneficial? Which way would be beneficial to do that?
See, if I look theoretically, this will not be chargeable tax whether it is your income or spouse income. Because if you transfer the money to the spouse and that income comes up, the law says that income will be considered your income. But that income, FCNR account income being exempt or NRA income being exempt, so it will not, either case it will be exempt. But the moment it becomes chargeable to tax, whatever the way you do, it will be then chargeable in your hands. It doesn't make a difference for the law, because section 64 of income tax, I believe all of you may be knowing it, where any money is any asset is transferred without consideration, income arising therefrom shall be chargeable in the hand of the transferor. Interestingly, for my viewers or my friend here, these two there are only two classes of people to whom you transfer, then clubbing provisions are applicable. One is when you transfer to your wife or to your daughter-in-law. If you transfer to your son, if you transfer to your daughter, then there is no clubbing provision. If you transfer to your son or your daughter, there is no clubbing provision. But if you transfer to your spouse or your daughter-in-law, and the reason, and there's a history behind, I need not go into that, why this is, I'm still wondering why this provision is there. If transfer to your son or daughter, that's fine. That's no, nobody, you transfer to your brother, nobody will raise any question.
Okay, sir. Final two questions, sir, I'll ask, and these are not directly related to NRI taxation, but people have taken this opportunity here since you are in the high echelons of income tax and ministry there. Direct tax code, do we see a light at the end of the tunnel?
I believe very interesting question. In the present scenario, it is next to impossible to introduce direct tax code. And the reasons are obvious. We wanted to say up to 20 lakh rupees income, the tax will be too low and there will be no tax on, almost it is. I don't think India can afford to have that type of tax structure. We have 6 crore taxpayer out of 130 crore populations. And that's why when the budget comes up on various TV programs, show, etc., people do ask me a question, do you expect any threshold to go from 2,50,000 off? I say it is not now possible because government will not like to lose the number of taxpayers which are below 2,50,000. So moment I raise the ceiling from 250 to 3 crore or 3 lakh, I lose 1 crore taxpayer. So that's, I don't think a direct tax code. I think it has been given a decent burial. May not be. Now nobody talks about that also. That's a issue. I will have been touched on that.
Yes, sir. The last question, I think you have more or less answered, because that was regarding like, can income tax be abolished sooner? But I think that you have already answered.
No, I can answer that income tax can be abolished on that issue. In two ways on that part.
Okay.
And this is more relevant. This is more relevant in the context because there's a lot of debate goes on whether we should tax agriculture income or not.
Hmm.
There's a lot of debate on that part whether agriculture income should be taxed or not. I always wonder, Indians, if you look at the Indian numbers, people do say that in India, like country, 6 crore taxpayer are very less and should be more. And one of the reasons people say is that since we don't tax agriculture income, and that's why the numbers are low. I have some different views on that part. We need to understand Indian economy for that part. First, to consider that Indian number of taxpayers are far less as compared to the world, other countries, is not a good idea, is not a correct perception. In America, per capita GDP as on date is roughly $50,000. And threshold exemption is hovering around $9,000. threshold. If every American is earning $50,000 and threshold exemption is $9,000, so every American should be a taxpayer. America's population is roughly 43 crore, and still out of that, 43% are the taxpayers, not 100%. As against this in India, per capita GDP, every person is earning 1,20,000 rupees. Our threshold exemption is 2,50,000 rupees. I pose a question: if every Indian is earning 1,20,000 rupees and threshold exemption is 2,50,000 rupees, how many taxpayers should be there? Nil. But still I have a 6 crore taxpayer. Why? And this is the reason. Another way, India 130 crore population. If I divide 6 family member, 6 person per family member, 5 or 6, India has roughly 20 crore families, out of which 60% are agriculturists. And these agriculturists are the people who do not have money with them and earn money. Maybe I can understand out of these 60% agriculturists, very few may be earning a huge amount of agriculture income, but others are not. And that's why our per capita GDP is low, etc. So the number of taxpayers, 6 crore, are reasonably good. I don't say there is no tax evasion, there is a lesser reporting of income. It can go to 7, 8, 9, 10. But to assume that 6 crore will go to 15, 20 crore is not a correct idea. As the economy will grow, our GDP, overall GDP will grow. Obviously, the number of taxpayers will increase because then the prosperity comes. Today, our economy is somewhere roughly less than $3 trillion. Would have been $3 trillion, but for this pandemic. And it will take time to reach to 5 trillion or 6 trillion. If that reaches, then I believe the number of taxpayers we can be increased, not before that. That's my perception and idea on that. And agriculture income, why should not be taxed? It because return on agriculture is too low as compared to the inputs cost, which I believe is there. So unless there, because now income tax department has complete statistical data of agriculture income by people who are otherwise taxpayer. And these numbers are not good, otherwise are not good. So that's a challenge which Indian economy has. But I believe the way this budget has been presented, to give me time a few minutes, I think this is a very 2020-2021 budget is a very dynamic budget. And for that part, I can just now, I think, promote my Indian amongst your all your, how you make more investment in India. Having said so,
Definitely.
see, this budget is going to give a very big boost. And if you look at the few of the changes which have been proposed in this budget, the far-reaching changes. Now, insurance sector has been opened up for all. 74% FDI has been allowed. Government has said that it will be not only LIC, but at least one company, insurance company in the public sector, Oriental or New India, whatever it is, get privatized.
Continue, sir. I think there was some disturbance.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, not two banks are going to be privatized, which public sector banks are going to be run. Now, electricity is going to be a choice. You are now in the city in which I am getting. Mr. Abhishek Singh, I think if you can mute, I believe. Your voice is, I think. All right. Now, electricity, if you can look at in India, now you will be able to choose your vendor. Mr. Abhishek Singh, please. Can you hear Mr. Abhishek Singh? You need to mute yourself, I believe.
Yes,
Anyhow,
sir. He has been muted, sir. Please proceed.
now-
Yeah, thank
Now, electricity, you will be able to choose your supplier in the city or the distributing company. I give an example. In 1995, telephone connection in India was a big privilege. Now you can on the top. And in today, cost of telephone is the minimal in the world. Can you imagine? I use the telephone 24/7 for 30 days and my bill is just 400 rupees per month. Just imagine $4 to $5 per month. Just imagine where we have reached in India. Because India is such a big, large consuming country. Now, the way India is opening up the economy and the way the opportunities are appearing in India and the way we have come up with Atmanirbhar and this production-linked incentive scheme, I pose only one question to people who ask me whether they should take the risk of investing in India. I pose a different question. Can any businessman or a person afford to take the risk of not investing in India because we give such a big opportunity to India? And one example which I give is in 1982, India opened up the import of the color television set when we started our color telecast, etc. Not a single color TV set was available off the shelf right from Tokyo to London. We were the such biggest consumer of the television. We imported all the TV sets. So that's a mass consumption based economy and looking to propel. Now, what advantage you get? Because when you go to a country, you may produce at a cheaper cost and a cheaper tax, but then you need to export everything. Here you have an opportunity where you will be able to get low wages, you will be paying lower taxes, and you will be able to consume a larger part of your production within that country because there is so much demand in that country. Now, India looking to the tax rate of a company, which is for manufacturing 15%, 15% for a manufacturing company. This is the lowest, I think, in the world anywhere for a corporate. For a non-manufacturing company, service industry, it is just 22% plus, may it come to 25%. So it's the lowest. Now we have introduced GST in India. It is, I think, the seamless movement from one state to another state. So that's the advantage which India has on this issue. And the way the finance minister has taken up a call in this 2021 budget, it's a very bold move where she has said the way she is going to borrow and to put the money more in the hands of the people and the infrastructure. I believe that's a credit goes to her. She has taken the bull by the horn. Yes, we can do and we will do. And that's why you can see how the capital market is performing. And that's why I suggest all of you, because Qatar is a very rich country, petroleum rich and money rich and talent rich. And they can put all whatever the saving they have and whatever the investment they can look into the India. So India can be a big, earner for India. I did a program for Netherlands also. They told they are specializing in, I think, food processing industry. Indian GDP contribution in the agriculture is less than, I think, roughly comes to 5% or 6% only of that sector. So I think that way, I think what can be done, it can change the scenario, entire scenario. So that's what we look forward to from countries which are rich, that they can find India to be the best country to invest on that part.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much on that, sir. Definitely, I think investment is coming and will come from here also in India. It was quite an insightful session. And sir, I can tell you the number of participants generally reduce when the Q&A session starts. But I am seeing the exact number of participants are there. That is a testimony to the charm or the influence that you have on members over here. With this, I'll pass on to my colleague, CA Vignesh, to present the vote of thanks, sir. Over to you, Vignesh.
Thank you, Kamlesh. Very well said. Actually, I was going to say the same thing. A very pertinent topic. And if you can see the numbers, sir, we are still at 100. And to have that really speaks for itself. I'm sure all our members enjoyed the first event of the new term, of the new ExCom that we had. And I think this was a very relevant topic with very practical scenarios that were touched upon. I think people are very clear now in terms of the residential status, the applicability, the interplay and applicability between FEMA and income tax, how they should handle NRE, NRO accounts, the double, and also very, very importantly, you touched upon the double tax treaty between Qatar and India and how it impacts us as residents in Qatar and who would want to, travel, and what is the safe landing tax planning that one could do on return to India. I think all these were very pertinent topics that showed in the number of questions that did come by. So again, thanks a lot on behalf of the ExCom, sir. Thank you very much. It was a really thought-provoking and a wonderful session that we enjoyed, and I'm sure the members really learned a lot. Thank you, members, for joining this session, and I think you really, we as your ExCom are here to bring you more and more such relevant and technical sessions all through this year. Thanks to our sponsors who have been the backbone of us and providing us this push to hold such sessions. Annual gold sponsors: Ernst & Young, Morrison Chartered Accountants, Aster Medical Center, Protiviti. Annual silver sponsors: KPMG, Oracle, Focus, and Crest and SVP Chartered Accountants. finally, I will also would like to reiterate the point that was brought up in the initial discussion. The new fees for this term would be 200 Qatari riyal. As our, for those who haven't paid fees in the year, in 2020, please do pay your fees through online transfer. Details will be posted in the group within the next few days by our treasurer. So thank you all once again, and we look forward to having you all on another session very soon. So, and thank you, Ved Jain sir. We hope to see you soon in Qatar with all these pandemic situations, going away soon, and we'll have you here physically.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you
And
very
I
much,
think
and
I
have a
can
good
see.
evening.
Thanks all everybody. I can see that somebody are asking for presentation. I will send it across to Nirlebji. He can share with you, everybody. All right.
Thank you.
Definitely, sir.
Thank you,
Definitely.
sir. Thank you.
All right.
Sir, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Nirlebji, and thank you all office bearers. It has been a great
Yeah.
pleasure for me to be part of this program. Wish you all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.